mic to work, so I'm gonna just do my best to project. Can y'all hear me in the back? Okay, if you can't hear me at some point, let me know. I'll repeat it. So my name is Pannell. I am a neuropsychotherapist from Newark, New Jersey. And I wanted to introduce you today to a tool that I created to measure quality of life. It's called the Dispositional-Affective Frequency Questionnaire. And we'll get into the process of how I created it and then like what it can do for you. Okay, so the term quality of life is commonly understood to refer to somebody's subjective perception of their life in the context of, where they live, their community, their worldview. There's a few issues that raises. For one, if I'm clinically delusional, I can tell you my life is great, and I might not have any reason that somebody, 9 out of 10 people might agree with me. It can be a positive thing because it does empower the person to choose their own criteria by which they judge their own life, which is a good thing. So it has a positive side and a negative side.
Is everything working again?
I don't know. Are you the moderator? Are you the tech person?
I'm IT.
Yeah, you're the tech person. I figured it out to the best of my ability. I'm fine, but the next person might need assistance.
Okay. All right, you in the, what time you in?
Only got 2 minutes. So.
Oh man, my bad. Sorry I interrupted.
Okay.
The mic isn't working.
Okay, I'll do it when you finish.
Okay, appreciate it. Basically, there's a give and take with quality of life measurement. It's very subjective, but that doesn't have to be a bad thing. I put life quality up there because also when I was working on my dissertation, I got a lot of pushback about trying to broaden up the notion of quality of life. I mean, to me, it's just a social construct. Nobody owns it. We can add to it. But I got a lot of pushback from other psychologists saying, no, this is what it's been in the literature. Kind of leave it how it is. Don't change it. And so I think life quality kind of gets to the same idea, but it may have more of like freedom of license to use it. Okay, so story time. I'm from Newark, New Jersey. I'm 33 years old. I was born in 1993. In 2015, I just graduated undergrad from Howard University. I went back home to my hometown, and I still had a little bit of my academic energy like lingering on me. So I became interested in creating and administering a survey. Why? I guess, I was looking around and it was interesting to me at the time. So basically I created a survey to investigate the organizations that were around me, which primarily consisted of gangs, employers, and like fraternities and sororities. And you have those other social organizations, like there's a lot of Freemasons and those types of organizations around. So basically, I saw all of these different teams essentially, and I wanted to know what team is better than another team. Like what's the best team? And by what criteria can we judge it? My take was you judge a tree by the fruit that it bears. So if I choose to be blood, or I choose to be a Freemason, or I choose to be Q, then after making that choice, my quality of life should reflect something based on that. And so it's not so much about judging the person. I wanted to see what are these organizations producing in people. I created a survey that had 57 items. 57 items consisted of basically a bunch of adjectives to describe how people felt, either their disposition, which consists of their posture towards life, their attitude towards life, or their affect, which is happy, sad, their emotion. Those 57 items were divided into 3 categories. There was one I call social positioning. It asks people, it basically probes how people see themselves in relation to other people. Do you see yourself as better than people around you, worse than the people around you, above them, below them, beside them? What's your relational disposition to the people around you. And then for the affective, there was positive or self-affirming beliefs, well, not beliefs, affects or dispositions like happy or elated or positive things. And then we did negative, sad, angry, belittled, things like that. When I administered it the first time, I was doing this all independently, not much guidance. I did the best I could with what I had with a bachelor's degree. That being said, I did not score all of the data. I did not analyze all of the data. I only had it in parts. So I created the survey. I administered the survey on foot. I was going to people, giving it out hand in hand, basically walking around my neighborhood. And then I met someone who was a Delta. She shared it with her colleagues, in the D9 organizations, and then she brought some back to me completed. And so I took all of that together, and then I created a scoring system to basically have 3 sub-scores based on the 3 categories that I created, and then a total score where I put it all together. That data sat there for about 6 years. 2021, I entered my doctoral program in neuropsychology at Howard, and then I finally had the faculty around me and the resources I needed to really analyze the data. So I looked at the data. What I found was that the people that were in Greek organizations scored higher on social positioning, they scored higher on positive self-defeating, but they scored lower on negative self. They scored higher on positive self-affirming, but they scored lower on negative self-defeating. So their total score was not different from non-Greek people. Even though they were better in some areas, they were also worse in other areas. So when you put it all together, they were about the same as the average person that never joined the organization. I didn't do further analysis to compare Bloods versus Crips, or this employer versus that employer. The majority of my sample, because she did such a good job distributing them, she probably did better than I did. I had way more, it was easier to split the sample on Greek versus non-Greek because I had comparable sample sizes compared to me doing, I only had 5 people that was blood, and then I got some other people over here that's not, they ain't seen nothing about that, so that was just easier. In 2024, I basically revised the measure, the DAFQ, and instead of looking at organizations, I wanted to look at beliefs. The same way we could say, okay, I could judge this organization by who people become as a result of being in it. I could also judge a belief by who people become as a result of believing it. And so it went from, I guess it took a more of a philosophical approach to it. And my first step was to do a principal components analysis to see, does the tool measure what I think it does? Remember, I suggested it measures 3 subcomponents that can be put together into one large component, but I needed to test that statistically. How many hands think I was correct? Nobody. I was not correct. It gave me 12 components. I said it was 3. It populated 12. So then I did, because that was an exploratory component analysis. And I did a confirmatory component analysis, which allows me to kind of superimpose my theory onto the data and then see how it divides. I basically took all my social positioning items and ran a component analysis just on those items. And anybody want to guess what happened? The same thing happened. Out of the 3 I picked, they all broke down into 4. So I ended up with 12. What you'll notice is that the majority of the items load on this first component. And you can see some of the items for social positioning, typically I feel noticed, appreciated, envied, safe, protected, secure, idolized. I know I'm low on time, but those are some of the items. Some of the items for positive self-affirming were happy, motivated, powerful, inspired, knowledgeable, ready, fearless, unstoppable. And then negative self-defeating was afraid, hopeless, depressed, hungry, ugly. You'll notice a trend for all 3. That first component loaded, most of them loaded on the first component, which tells me it's not that what I said wasn't there. There's more than I thought that was there, because these other combinations of loadings that I didn't predict, and I also at this time don't necessarily have a name for. The computer can't name it either. All it can say is these things loaded with this correlation to each other. But that could be like a follow-up study to figure out what to call those things. My next step in creating this tool was to do construct validity. I needed to administer the tool alongside another tool that I thought would behave in a similar way. And I needed to administer it alongside a tool that I thought would behave in an opposing way. So the one that behaves in a similar way was the psychological well-being scale. By the name, you can tell it measures psychological well-being. There was a statistically significant positive correlation between the DAFQ and psychological well-being scale, which my hypothesis was supported. Yeah, thank you. For the PHQ-4, that's the Patient Health Questionnaire 4. You may be familiar with that. It's a brief screening for anxiety and depression. Higher scores on PHQ-4 means increased likelihood that you have anxiety or depression, which means since on the DAFQ, higher scores mean higher quality of life, I would think they would be opposite. And they were, negative 0.249 at the 0.001 level. So that was also supported. And then in the last iteration, I administered it alongside the Who, Cure Well brief, which is a 25-item version of a 100-item instrument. Who, Cure Well is the World Health Organization. I figured if I went with like this name brand organization, they have credibility. Because the whole point of this is like getting a cosign, right? For me to say my test does something, I need a cosign from another test that's already established. I feel like, the WHO, World Health Organization, decent cosign, but it did what I hypothesized it would do. So I can fairly say it does measure quality of life. The Who Cure Well does not produce a total score. I created the total score, and this was my rationale. The Who Cure Well produces 4 scores. You can see them here. There's a physical well-being scale, a psychological well-being scale, social well-being scale, and an environmental scale. There's these 4 domains. So the test gives you 4 scores, but they all positively coded, meaning higher scores mean better well-being. So if individually higher scores mean better well-being, then some of them should mean higher scores also mean the same thing. This is why I came up with the total score. Why they don't have a total score, I don't know. But I looked at how does the DAFQ total score relate to each of those 4 subdomains. And as you can see, significant. You get a significant. You get a significant. Yeah, that's not common. I've run other tests, a whole lot of insignificance. So I really appreciate when it's lit up like that. But basically, this suggests that my test does measure quality of life. If you want a copy of this test, if you have more questions, you can scan the QR code, and it will populate an email, and then you can send me an email asking me for a copy or more information. Anybody have any questions about anything I've said? Yes.
Was the non-grade population, was it college graduates or just anybody?
I couldn't tell you if they went to college or not. I didn't even record that data. It was literally like 2 questions at the top. So it was like a hard copy. At the top it would say organization name and how many years you've been a member. So they could have been in college. I didn't even ask. Any other questions? Back?
What do you hope to see in the future of this?
I'm hoping y'all will use this. Consider how this could, and I guess we'll get to my question for you all, but I'm hoping this will generate or inspire some ideas where you'll think about, maybe I can measure quality of life in my research or at work. Because it's not just for research, this applies in work settings. You can use it for like businesses to evaluate what becomes of employees who stay at this job for X amount of time. Or what was their baseline when they came in, and you can do a post-test later, which somebody suggested in the last time I presented this. But also, at a minimum, the DAFQ measures quality of life. But that's not what my intent was when I designed it. This is just what I got the least pushback on from my committee. What the real juice of it is, it measures psychological advantageousness, which is a whole other construct. I'll have to do a whole other presentation about that. But think about it, instead of using this to measure a business or a person, we use it to measure beliefs. And we say, instead of putting the person or the business under the microscope, put the belief under the microscope, and now we can see the correlation between the belief and quality of life. Now somebody who's unsure of what to believe can see like nutrition facts, so to speak, of beliefs. I know if I choose this belief, I'm more likely to strongly agree that I feel sad. Or maybe if I choose this other belief, I'm more likely to strongly agree that I feel respected or belittled or whatever the outcome is. As it stands right now, I think people typically choose beliefs arbitrarily. You don't really know, it's like first come, first served. I was raised in a Christian household, therefore I'm Christian. Or I had certain life circumstances that were influential or like something impressed me. And then I had this belief as a result. But that doesn't mean that the benefit of that didn't expire at some point. Or maybe I chose it and it was adaptive, then may no longer be adaptive. So all of this I think will help people make more informed decisions about what they believe. But that's more so on the psychological advantageousness side. Just with quality of life though, it may help for us to take more looks at quality of life, because I think oftentimes we just don't look, we don't ask the question. A lot of psychology is centered on pathology, like what's going wrong with this person, what disease do they have, what's the symptoms they have. Don't typically ask like what's going well in your life and measure that and do studies on that. You have a question? Okay. Any other questions? Don't worry, this is not the last time you can ask me a question. If you see me around, you can always ask me a question. Or scan the QR code, send me an email. Okay, I think that's my time.